Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Gary, and if there's one thing I've learned the hard way, it's that you never really know what's happening right under your own roof. People say that love is built on trust, and that when you find the right person, you should give them your heart completely. But let me tell you something. When you trust blindly, you're not being loyal. You're being a fool. I learned that the hard way. I believed in love. The kind where you commit fully, have each other's backs, and don't even entertain the thought of betrayal because you assume your partner values the relationship as much as you do. I never thought I would be the man sitting here, telling a story about how my own wife made me question everything I believed about love, commitment, and marriage. But here I am. Looking back, I realize how easy it is to be deceived when you're in love. You don't see the signs, or maybe you do, but you brush them off because you don't want to believe that the person you trust could be capable of hurting you. You assume that since you're faithful and all in, they must be too. But that's not always the case. After everything I've been through, I honestly feel like love is just a scam, a word people throw around without truly meaning it. If you stick around, you'll understand exactly why I feel this way. I met my wife, Kimberly, when I was 30. She was 25 and full of life. At that age, I was ready to settle down, build a family, and create something solid. When I met her, everything just clicked. We could talk for hours about anything and everything, and from the outside looking in, we seemed like the perfect couple. We dated for a little over a year before I popped the question. Some people might say that's not long enough, but I felt like I had found my person. There were no obvious red flags, nothing that made me second-guess my decision. We had similar interests and enjoyed each other's company. Everything felt natural, like we were meant to be together. After we got married, life was good. We moved into a nice place my mother owned and settled into our routine, and for a while, it felt like I had everything I ever wanted. I was genuinely happy. We did almost everything together in the beginning, but looking back, the biggest betrayals come from the people you trust the most. One day, Kimberly mentioned that her phone was acting up. It kept freezing, the battery drained too fast, and certain apps wouldn't open. She was frustrated, so I told her I'd take care of it. So, I took her phone to a repair shop, thinking it would be a quick fix. The technician looked at it and told me that repairing the phone would cost almost half the price of a brand new one. That didn't make much sense to me. If I was already spending that much, I might as well get her something new. I figured she'd be happy about it, and honestly, I liked the idea of surprising her. So, instead of going for the repair, I went ahead and bought her a brand new phone. What I didn't know was that this small decision would change everything. Before transferring files from the old phone to the new one, I decided to check through it one last time before giving the go-ahead order. I wanted to make sure everything important was backed up properly. Photos, contacts, messages, basic stuff. But as I scrolled through the menu, a disguised folder caught my attention. It was hidden and wasn't visible among other regular files. My gut told me to open it. When I did, my entire body stiffened. There it was, a dating app inside the folder. My brain struggled to process why my wife would have a dating app. I decided to open it, and as I kept scrolling, it was evident she was up to something. The messages inside told me everything I needed to know. She had been talking to other men, not just recently, but even back when we were dating. Some conversations were playful, some outright flirty, and others too explicit for me to even stomach. My fingers tightened around the phone as I read line after line. Different men, different conversations, but the same pattern. She laughed at their jokes, entertained their advances, and responded in ways that made it clear she wasn't just being friendly. She had been doing this under my nose the entire time. So, without hesitation, I took screenshots, capturing names, dates, and the worst parts of the conversations. I made sure to get everything. If she tried to lie her way out of it later, these messages would speak for themselves. Once I had what I needed, I locked the phone and handed it to the shop operator. "Go ahead with the transfer," I said, my voice steady. As the technician continued transferring the files, I stood there, completely zoned out. I wondered if she had always been like this. No matter how I turned it in my head, one thing was clear. This wasn't something I could ignore. I needed to talk to her. I needed answers. By the time I got home, I had already decided how I was going to handle it. So, when I walked through the door, I pulled out the brand new phone and handed it to her with a small smile, watching her face closely. Her eyes lit up, and she immediately wrapped her arms around me, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "Oh my God, babe, you got me a new phone?" "You didn't have to." She was genuinely happy, completely unaware of what was coming next. I let her enjoy the moment for a few seconds before I cleared my throat and spoke. "Yeah, I figured it was better than fixing the old one. By the way, I looked through your phone before the transfer started." My voice was calm, but direct. "I saw the dating app." Her smile faded in an instant. "Excuse me," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly. I held her gaze. "I saw it, Kimberly. I saw the messages. You've been talking to other guys." For a second, she just stared at me, and I could see her trying to figure out how to respond. Then, she scoffed, "You went through my phone?" "Seriously, Gary? That's an invasion of privacy. Do you not trust me?" I expected that reaction. Deflection. Making it about me instead of what she had done. I didn't let it shake me. "That's not the point," I said firmly. "I want to know why you have a dating profile and why you're talking to other men." Her expression changed again. She realized I wasn't backing down. "Look, I wasn't trying to do anything serious," she mumbled. "I was just, I don't know, bored, I guess. I never actually planned to meet anyone." "Do you understand how messed up this is?" I asked, my voice low but steady. "Giving attention to someone outside our marriage is how things fall apart. I don't want that happening to us." She looked at me, her eyes darting away like she couldn't handle the weight of what she had done. I took a deep breath and made my stance clear. "You need to end this. Delete the app. Cut off every guy you've been talking to. I need to know that this will never happen again." She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll delete it." She pulled out her phone, and right there in front of me, she uninstalled the app. I watched her do it, but something in my gut told me this wasn't over. For the next 8 months, life carried on like nothing had ever happened. After Kimberly swore that she had deleted the dating app and cut off communication with those men, I did try to believe her. So, every time I remembered those messages, those conversations she had with other men, I told myself to let it go. I reminded myself that relationships require trust, and if I kept questioning her, I'd only push her away. There were moments when I'd hear her phone vibrate and my stomach would tighten, but I forced myself not to ask who it was. I didn't want to be that paranoid, insecure husband who smothered his wife with suspicion. I had no idea that while I was trying so hard to convince myself that everything was fine, my wife was still living a double life right under my nose. I woke up one morning feeling like my body was punishing me for something I didn't do. I had this burning, stinging sensation when I went to pee. I paused for a second, trying to make sense of this. The idea that I could have chlamydia or gonorrhea didn't even make sense. How the hell could this be happening? As the day went on, the pain didn't just stick around, it got worse. What started as a mild irritation turned into full-blown agony. Every trip to the bathroom felt like torture. By evening, I noticed something even more disturbing. A thick, yellowish discharge. That was the moment everything clicked. My body was telling me, loud and clear, that something was wrong. The next morning, I didn't waste any time. I went straight to the hospital, hoping for some kind of explanation that wasn't the one I feared. Maybe it was a urinary tract infection. But after a full examination and lab tests, the doctor sat me down and told me I had an STD. I stared at him, waiting for him to say something else, but all he said was, "These infections are only transmitted through sexual contact." That was it. My wife had slept with someone else. There was no other explanation. I walked out of that hospital in a daze. That night, I lay in bed next to Kimberly, staring at the ceiling while my mind raced in 100 different directions. The next morning, I woke up before her, already mentally preparing myself for what was about to happen. I made my way to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee. A few minutes later, Kimberly walked in. She kissed me on the cheek, and I had to fight every muscle in my body from pushing her away in disgust. I let her pour herself some coffee, take a seat take a sip. Then I looked at her dead in the eye and asked, "Kim, have you been with anyone else?" The shift in her expression was immediate. Her face twisted into an offended glare like I had just accused her of murder. She put her cup down and scoffed. "Excuse me? What kind of question is that?" "A simple one. Have you been with another man?" I pressed. I could see the anger building in her eyes. "I can't believe this. Are you seriously accusing me of cheating? After everything we've been through?" I didn't blink. "Did you cut off the guys from that dating app like you promised?" That was when she exploded. "Oh my God, you're really bringing that up again? I told you I deleted everything. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to be with someone who doesn't trust you? This is ridiculous, Gary. Absolutely ridiculous." But I wasn't backing down. "Then hand me your phone," I said. She recoiled slightly, pulling it back toward her. "No, that's an invasion of privacy." I nodded slowly. "All right, then let's go to the hospital and get tested. Together." She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "I don't have to prove anything to you." That was all the proof I needed. I exhaled through my nose, pretending to give up, relaxing my shoulders like I was letting it go. But the second she turned her head, I lunged and grabbed the phone from her hands. Before she could snatch it back, I pressed it against her face to unlock it. She shrieked and jumped up from her seat, grabbing at me, but it was too late. The screen lit up. I started scrolling. And there it was. Everything I feared. Messages, images, receipts. Conversations with multiple men, some recent, some stretching back months. Explicit texts, plans to meet up, and miss you messages. She never stopped. Not even after I begged her to end it. She had been lying to my face this whole time. As I turned to look at her, "How could you be this unfaithful?" My voice was eerily calm. She didn't even apologize or try to lie her way out of it. Instead, she scoffed and gave me the middle finger. Right to my face. I felt something inside me snap. "Pack your stuff. This marriage is over," I said. "I want you gone before I get back." She smirked, thinking I was bluffing. I didn't wait to argue. I grabbed my car keys, walked straight out the door, and left her sitting there. As I drove just a few blocks down the road, then I pulled over, picked up my phone, and called my lawyer. "Find me the best divorce lawyer in town. I want this done immediately." By the time I got to my parents' house, I already knew I wouldn't be going back that day. They welcomed me in, confused as to why I was there so early in the morning, but I just told them I needed some time. I didn't explain everything yet. I couldn't. When I finally came back to my place 2 days later, it was empty. She was gone. I didn't have to wonder where she went. It didn't take long for the truth to find me. She moved straight into another man's house. One of the guys she had been seeing behind my back long before I even knew what was going on. That realization burned in a way I can't even describe. I won't lie, divorce was hell. People talk about it like it's just paperwork, like it's some clean-cut process where you sign a few documents and walk away. But the reality is brutal. Divorce isn't just about legally separating from someone. It's about untangling yourself from the life you built with them. It's about waking up and realizing the person you loved, the person you made sacrifices for, the person you thought you'd grow old with, was never really yours to begin with. The pain is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It probably hurt more because I truly loved her and gave her everything, which in return, she gave me nothing but lies. But I learned. I learned the hard way, and now I want other men to learn without having to go through the same thing. First, never love blindly. Love is supposed to be built on trust, but trust should never be given freely. It has to be earned. I trusted Kimberly because I wanted to believe in her, not because she deserved it. And that was my mistake. Second, if someone disrespects you once, they will do it again. I caught her talking to other men, and instead of walking away, I let her convince me it was harmless. That was the moment I should have left. The third lesson? Trust actions, not words. People will tell you what you want to hear, but their actions will always expose the truth. Kimberly told me she deleted the app. Kimberly told me she ended things. But Kimberly was still sleeping with other men behind my back. Lastly, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. The first red flag is all you need. Don't wait for 10 more. I don't share this story for sympathy. I share it because I know there's a man out there who needs to hear this. If you're ignoring the signs, if you're convincing yourself that your gut feeling is wrong, if you're making excuses for a woman who keeps disrespecting you, don't. Protect your heart. Protect your future. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, send them this video. It might save them from the pain I went through. Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Gary, and I have a question for you. How long can someone tolerate disrespect in a relationship before they finally walk away? How many times do you let things slide? How many times do you swallow your feelings just to keep the peace? How many times do you convince yourself that it's not that serious? Because, for me, what she did at her birthday party was the last straw. It pushed me past the point of return. I'm just going to tell it exactly how it happened, from my point of view. So before you conclude, watch till the end. The truth is, I didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave. This story was built on years of small moments, things said and unsaid, things I ignored, and things I tried to fix. But that night, something broke. And once it broke, there was no going back. Every tragic love story starts with a beautiful beginning, and the one I had with my wife, Pamela, was no exception. The first time I met her, it honestly felt like fate stepped in and pressed pause on everything around me. She was beautiful, with this calm confidence in how she carried herself. But it wasn't just her looks that drew me to her. She was smart, witty, and carried conversations with such ease that I found myself wanting to spend more time around her. And when we started talking, it felt like we just clicked. You couldn't have told me otherwise back then. I truly believed she was made for me. Our relationship moved fast, and it felt right. I was convinced we were a perfect match. If anyone had tried to tell me she wasn't the one, I would have told them they didn't know what they were talking about. So, naturally, I proposed. And when she said yes, it felt like life was giving me everything I had ever wanted. But then we got married and moved in together, and slowly, things started to shift. Little habits that didn't show up while we were dating. I told myself it was just part of adjusting to married life. Everyone has flaws, right? And I loved her, so I overlooked them. I gave her grace the same way I'd want someone to give me grace. But what I didn't realize at the time was that these were signs of deeper things I hadn't seen when we were caught up in love and excitement. Before long, those little flaws started becoming harder to ignore. You know, I've always seen myself as the kind of man who'd have a small family of 1 or 2 kids running around the house. It's something I grew up believing was part of what made life full. Not having kids wasn't even something I ever considered. So naturally, when I married Pamela, I just assumed we were on the same page. We never had a deep conversation about it, which, looking back now, was a huge mistake on my part. I assumed that, because we were getting married, she wanted what I wanted. I mean, isn't that part of why people get married? To build a life together, raise a family? I didn't pick up on any signs that she felt differently. She never mentioned not wanting children, not once while we were dating. So, in my mind, it was just understood. But after we got married and the real life stuff started to settle in, she told me one evening that she wasn't thinking about having kids anytime soon. She said she wasn't in a hurry and wanted to focus on other things. It caught me off guard. I didn't argue with her, though. I told myself that as time went by, she'd start to feel the shift in her body and thoughts. Like when her biological clock started ticking, she'd naturally want to have a child. I didn't want to pressure her. I thought I was being patient. But deep down, I knew I was ignoring a red flag. I just didn't want to face it at the time. Pamela had this habit that became more and more apparent the longer we were married. When she wanted something, it was non-negotiable. There was no room for discussion, no space for compromise. It didn't matter what anyone else wanted. I remember during our dating years, I was more than happy to do anything to make her happy. I would go out of my way to meet her needs and to make her feel special. But as time passed and we settled into married life, I realized that her need for control wasn't just a little thing. It was something that touched everything in our lives together. The more she got what she wanted, the more I was left feeling like my own needs didn't matter. There was also something else going on, something that felt more subtle, but was no less impactful. It was like she saw herself as somehow superior to me in the marriage. She would make these little comments, these condescending remarks. And the worst part was, whenever she did agree to bend on something, she would frame it as though she was settling. She wasn't compromising, she was settling. That word hit me every time she said it, because it was like she was telling me that she was doing me a favor by being with me. It felt like I was being tolerated, not loved. It got to a point where I started to feel like she was holding all the cards, while I was just left playing catch-up. Even though I worked hard to maintain balance in our home, while also working full-time, I could feel this growing sense that she thought of herself as the superior partner. She didn't seem to acknowledge the work I put into everything, both at home and outside of it. Pamela worked, too, but I was the one covering most of the household expenses. That dynamic started to eat at me. I felt like no matter how much I contributed, it was never enough to earn her respect. It felt like I was doing everything I could to keep the household running smoothly, but in her eyes, that didn't seem to matter. She acted like I owed her something for being in this marriage. She didn't say it outright, but the way she carried herself, the little remarks, the way she would make everything about her own needs and desires, it all painted a picture that she thought she was doing me a favor by being with me. As the months went on, I started trying to talk about all this with her. I thought maybe if I could express how I was feeling, how this behavior was affecting me, it would help her understand. But whenever I brought it up, it was like I was speaking a different language. She would dismiss my concerns, brushing them off, saying, "You're just stirring up problems where there aren't any." The more I tried to communicate, the more she shut me down. That kind of reaction created a gap between us, and she didn't seem to care. Pamela didn't make any effort to close that gap. She never tried to understand what I was going through. Instead, I just found myself spending more time at the office and more time in my study, trying to escape the tension at home. When I did come home, it felt like we were just roommates, sharing space without any real connection. We hardly spoke, hardly interacted, except for the occasional surface-level conversations. For months, this was our reality. We were like two strangers living under the same roof. The only time we would act like a couple was when we were in public, attending events, or hanging out with friends. Basically, anytime we had to put on a show for others. That's when we'd pretend everything was fine, playing the part of the happy couple. But once the events were over, we'd go back to being emotionally distant, hardly speaking, each of us retreating into our own world. It was like we were living parallel lives, never really meeting in the middle, never really seeing each other for who we truly were anymore. Pamela's 30th birthday was coming up, and for me, it felt like a chance to reconnect with her. I was tired of the distance between us, tired of the silence that stretched for months. So, I saw her birthday as an opportunity to show her that I still cared, that I wasn't ready to just give up on us. I thought if I made it special enough, we could find our way back to each other. But I'll admit, I wasn't sure exactly what I was supposed to do. I wanted it to be perfect, but I had no idea where to start. Then one evening, Pamela came into the living room with a suggestion. "I think I'll throw a small party for my 30th birthday," she said casually. That was when I saw my opening, the chance I needed to make a real effort. I could still surprise her, still show her that I wanted to make things work. Without even thinking about it, I volunteered to handle the whole thing. I told her, "Let me take care of the party arrangements. You don't have to worry about a thing." I figured if I could take the burden off her, maybe it would show her that I was trying to step up. The relief on her face was immediate. She smiled and kissed me, and I could see how thankful she was. I was determined to pull this off. I got in touch with an event planner to help bring it all together. The whole thing had to be perfect. I didn't want her to have any reason to complain. We discussed everything, every detail, from the decorations to the menu, to make sure it was exactly what Pamela would like. I went all in. Extra flowers, custom invitations, music, lighting. I didn't hold back. When the day finally arrived, the house looked amazing. Everything was in place. It was all done the way I'd imagined it. I felt a small sense of pride as I saw the result. The guests started arriving. Friends, colleagues, and some people I wasn't even sure Pamela truly cared about. But that didn't matter now. Pamela, as always, was the star of the show. She was dazzling. She glowed in the spotlight, laughing and chatting with everyone, floating through the crowd. I couldn't help but admire her. There she was, looking more beautiful than I'd ever seen her. I kept thinking about the quiet moment we'd have after the party, just the two of us. I was looking forward to it, the time when I could give her the special gift I had prepared, something from my heart. Maybe if I could just find the right words, we could finally have that real conversation. So I hoped. As the night wore on and the party continued, the energy was lively, with everyone mingling, chatting, and enjoying themselves. Then the moment arrived, and Pamela stood up to give her birthday speech. At first, it seemed like any other speech you'd hear at a celebration. She started by thanking everyone for coming and for making her feel so special. There was the usual talk about how grateful she was for the people in her life and how much she appreciated the love and support she'd received over the years. She even reflected on turning 30, acknowledging how different things were from when she was younger and how everything had worked out so perfectly in her life so far. But then she smiled, looking around at the group of people who'd gathered there to celebrate her, and added, "Yeah, everything's been perfect. Aside, I guess I kinda settled for Gary." As the sentence finished, the room erupted in laughter. The people around her found it funny, light-hearted, maybe a little cheeky. But I didn't laugh. I couldn't. The moment she said it, it felt like the room spun for me. It wasn't a joke to me, and it wasn't funny. I've heard those words before in passing, in the heat of small arguments, but this time it was public. That phrase, settling for me, had been a wound for months, maybe even longer. It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but tonight, hearing it felt like a raw cut that just wouldn't stop bleeding. It was like she just told the world that I was the consolation prize, the runner-up in her life. The laughter from everyone else made it worse. As she continued mingling with guests after the speech, I knew I couldn't pretend like everything was fine. I wasn't going to let her degrade me like that, not again, not in front of anyone. So, without saying a word to anyone, I turned and walked away. When I got to our bedroom, I packed what I needed. I didn't look back. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in a house, in a life, with someone who thought so little of me. A few hours passed in silence, but I knew Pamela was still with guests. Later, my phone buzzed. It was her. I could feel a wave of frustration well up in me, but I took a deep breath before checking the message. It was short and direct. "Where are you?" I didn't reply. I was too pissed off to even come up with a response that wouldn't escalate things further. Then came a phone call. I saw her name flash across the screen. I let the phone ring 5 times before finally picking it up. I could tell by the way the call was coming through that she was desperate for me to pick up. Before she could even say anything, I cut her off. "I'm tired of your humiliation, Pamela," I said. Tonight was the last straw. There was a pause on the other end. I don't know if it was shock or confusion. Pamela, as usual, acted like she didn't know what I was talking about. She tried to pretend that the whole situation was some kind of misunderstanding, trying to downplay everything. She said, "It was just a harmless joke. You're throwing a tantrum over something so little." I could feel my blood pressure rising. A tantrum. That's what she thought this was? That single sentence felt like a slap across the face. The truth was right in front of me. She had never respected me enough to truly understand my emotions. She couldn't care less about how I felt as long as things stayed the way she wanted. I didn't even let her finish her sentence. I ended the call. I didn't need to hear any more. I already knew what she thought, and it wasn't worth wasting my breath. She called again, and again. I didn't pick up. I wasn't going to be drawn into a conversation that would only make me feel worse. After a while, I saw a new message from her. She was trying to backpedal to make herself feel better, and to convince me that nothing was wrong. "It was just a harmless joke," she wrote. "I didn't mean to offend you." I stared at the screen, looking at the message, but her words meant nothing to me anymore. She would say anything to make herself feel better, but it didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line. This time, though, there was no turning back. I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. She had shown me how she truly felt about me, and I wasn't about to pretend I didn't see it. Weeks had passed since that night. Pamela's messages, her constant calling, her pleading, none of it changed how I felt. I knew I couldn't keep pretending it didn't matter. So, I did what I had to do. I went to a divorce lawyer to end the marriage, because I was the one losing here. He served her the divorce papers. I was happy to get out of this toxic situation. 2 days later, I went back to the house to collect the rest of my things. As I grabbed my belongings, she found me, tears streaming down her face. She begged me to remember the vows we'd made, to think about what we had shared. She could cry all she wanted, but her tears didn't change the fact that the damage had already been done. "That doesn't concern me anymore," I said. The vows she wanted me to remember? She had already broken them, and so had I. As I look back on everything, some life lessons stand out the most in this situation. These are things I wish someone had told me before all of this happened. I want to share them with you because if you're going through something similar, or even if you're just thinking about your future relationships, you need to know this. 1. Never assume shared values without having real conversations before marriage. Before we got married, I assumed Pamela and I were on the same page about wanting kids. But I never really asked her about those things in the way I should have. I didn't take the time to sit down and have a deep conversation about our future. You can't just assume your partner shares your values and goals. You have to talk about it clearly and honestly before you make that kind of commitment. I learned that the hard way. Don't make that mistake. 2. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, even in jokes, believe them. That's how they see you. Pamela's harmless jokes weren't harmless at all. The way she would joke about settling for me wasn't just a playful remark. That was how she really saw me. When someone constantly puts you down, even in ways that seem small at first, don't ignore it. It's not just a joke, it's a reflection of how they view you. And if you let it slide, they'll keep doing it. 3. Silence in a relationship isn't always peace. Sometimes it's slow destruction. I used to think that the quiet in our home meant peace. I thought that since we weren't fighting, since we weren't yelling at each other, maybe things weren't so bad. But what I learned was that silence wasn't peace, it was distance. It was me withdrawing and her doing the same. We stopped talking, we stopped sharing. The longer I stayed silent, the more the relationship deteriorated. It's like a slow burn. You don't feel it at first, but eventually you realize you're burning away everything that mattered. Don't confuse silence for peace. It's just a sign that things are falling apart, little by little. 4. When someone consistently dismisses your feelings, they are telling you exactly what you're worth to them. The worst part was how Pamela reacted when I finally stood up for myself. She dismissed my feelings, called them tantrums and overreactions. She downplayed everything I said, everything I felt. And when someone dismisses your feelings like that, it's clear they don't respect you. If they can't even take the time to understand why you're upset, why you're hurt, then they're telling you exactly what you're worth to them. And it's not much. That's something I had to come to terms with. I didn't deserve to be treated that way, but for a long time, I let it happen. Don't make the same mistake. Now, I'm turning the floor over to you. What do you think? Was I wrong to walk away that night? Was there something I missed, or do you think I did the right thing? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? I really want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. And if you've ever been in a similar situation, feel free to share. I appreciate you sticking with me through this story, and I hope you take something from it. Thanks for listening.